Well, hello and welcome to another roundup of Stop Hinkley's news. And this relates, if you like, to early summer 2026. We're going back to May because in the end of May, friend of Stop Hinkley, Steve Thomas, professor at Greenwich University, went to Berlin to do a presentation to an audience there, largely about Sizewell C, which is the new build in Suffolk. Again, it's the similar design to Hinkley C, though of course they're all pretty unique when they actually get around to building them. And Steve referred back to Hinkley C, and what his point for them is that the Hinkley Point C model is not an option for future new nuclear build in this country. And he explained thus. The deal was a contract to buy all the power from Hinkley C for 35 years at a fixed, real take or pay price. In today's money, Steve's estimate that Hinkley C electricity would be about 160 euros per megawatt hour, and that can only go up and will go up until, if ever, Hinkley C actually works. EDF agreed to bear the risk of cost and time escalation, though all the construction issues fall to EDF, not to the government, which is why the government always rubs its hands and shrugs its shoulders about delays and cost overruns. It's not their problem, is what they say, but the cost of electricity keeps going up. When the contract was signed, the plant was expected to cost £18 billion. Remember those days? In 215 money, and be complete by 2025. And we now know, because there have been five cost and time increases since the initial estimate, completion is now forecast for 2032 at a cost of 35 billion in 2015 money, which will equate to probably 50 billion by the time it's got there. In 2018, EDF realized the risk involved in building a new nuclear power station on this basis was too high, and they refused to go ahead with Sizewell C using the Hinkley C model. When signed, the Hinkley deal was seen as a bad deal for consumers and therefore a good deal for EDF. It's turned out to be a bad deal for both parties, so neither EDF nor us, the consumers, will benefit from Hinkley C. The Hinkley power price is 60% more than the current wholesale price for electricity and 60% more than 14.5 gigawatts of renewables as contracted in 2026, almost all to be complete by 2030. In 2024, EDF wrote off 12.9 billion euros of the investment, and in 2026 a further 2.5 billion euros, which is a high proportion of EDF investment to date. That's in a nutshell why Hinkley C has turned out to be a really bad deal for just about everybody involved in it, except the contractors and the actual people on the working on the site. A little aside, it doesn't feature in the news round, but you might as well know that the mantra amongst many of the 15,000 Hinkley C workers is it's a grand a week to play hide and seek. There are so many of them out there, and it's so hard to keep track of what people are doing that it's only too easy to whistle your way through a day and come away at the end of a week with a grand in your pocket and not having contributed very much. Productivity, if you're expecting to do it with 5,500 people and suddenly we're 15,000 people and the time taken to build Hinkley C keeps on going up, there is something incredibly wrong with the productivity they're getting from the workforce. Okay, we look back, not as far as the May with Steve Thomas, but into June. Um, what's going on in Ukraine is really bad news. Both the live, or both the major nuclear power station sites out there, nuclear, Chernobyl and Zaporizhzhia, are always at risk in a war zone, and there have been fires. And Russia said it is carrying out enhanced radiation monitoring after fires broke out in the exclusion zone around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant back in May, and all bad news. It said that small modular reactors are still unlikely to drive the energy transition because renewables, batteries, and grid flexibility attract far more investment, scale faster, and generate quicker returns. So, for a faster buck, if that's what you're into, SMRs might be the thing. However, we've yet to see one in anywhere outside Russia or China that actually works. Better more than anything more than the design. Steve Thomas is also busy in May pointing out that the 2025 Nuclear Regulatory Task Force, otherwise known as the Fingleton Review, which was established to cut the red tape blocking nuclear expansion, is fundamentally misconceived. The evidence shows that failed nuclear projects collapse due to financial risk, not regulatory failure or over-regulation, which is the concern. The task force lacked the expertise in radiation science, environment, and economics, and its recommendations threaten regulator independence. The ONR looks like being forced into a corner and pretty well have its arms twisted to agree that things can go through that really shouldn't. And its reforms of the ONR will consume government resources without delivering new capacity before the mid-2040s. EDF, always enterprising, is selling its renewable energy assets in China, or it's selling them as it's focusing on European nuclear power projects. It's got such a lot of restoration and potentially new build in France, as well as the sideshow, which is what we amount to with Hinkley C and Sizewell C. It's going to have to draw in its horns elsewhere. They're doing lots of interesting things. The Financial Times has pointed out that the risk of relying on EDF to deliver Europe's nuclear renaissance when they need to cut costs and rejuvenate their reactor building expertise is considerable. And that they're swanning about, but in fact not actually getting on with building new stuff at anything like the rate they may need to. Bearing in mind they've got 57 or 58 aging reactors, and this hot summer has put at least 2 of them out due to low water levels in the rivers for which they depend for their cooling water. Britain Remade. If you've not come across Britain Remade, it's one of these Tufton Street lobbying think tank groups that focused around Liz Truss. So, some track record for producing reliable, financially sound governance. And their head honcho is got his bee in his bonnet that Natural England has still got it in for the people along the banks of the Bristol Channel whose farmland could be taken to create salt marsh. It's nonsense. Natural England have rebutted this time and time again, but people who support the papers who promote this and who have interests in new oil extraction and in hydrocarbons generally are anything to make nuclear power look bad is the aim of the game. And Natural England get it in the neck, even though they have not told EDF it has to put more salt marsh in. All that anybody wants is a fish protection system around Hinkley C that works. And what's there is down to EDF putting it into the development consent order way back in 2011, 2012, not to what people have asked for since. Nothing new has been asked for. It's whether EDF will or won't be able to do the things it said it was going to do. We've got a new Prime Minister. This day is the first full 24 hours of having Andy Burnham as our new Prime Minister. So congratulations and good luck to him. From the sort of Stop Hinkley perspective, and I suppose the perspective of people in Sizewell in Suffolk, who are opposed to Sizewell C, it may not mean very much. The focus in the departments, the government departments, which will have new ministers, but pretty much the same ethos running through them, is that nuclear is going to be part of what's going to make things happen, no matter how unrealistic the ideas are about how soon any of it can be achieved. The Mirror picked up the problems at Zaporizhzhia, and because it's been targeted again, and there's continual concern over its safety since the start of the war with Russia in 2022. And that's been picked up in the Mirror and the Mail. Oh, the Mail story is about the dangers in the Gulf. As America's war with Iran continues, there are nuclear sites in the Gulf states that Iran has threatened and actually targeted and attacked. So that's not what you want to hear, and it's not good for us either. The National Audit Office only ever consulted after the event, but they pointed out that the novel finance structure for Sizewell C needs to be monitored closely, because the deal that's been reached, which is reckoned to benefit us to £18 billion over the site's operational life, whilst our electricity bills to fund that happening by up to £19 a year, according to National Audit Office, is, whilst it may have reduced the risk, the investor financial returns will cost consumers, that's us of course, over £4 billion, only justified if they cut construction costs and speed up the delivery time. No guarantees there, I'm afraid. And the Financial Times points out that power from Sizewell C will be more expensive than Hinkley C, according to the National Audit Office. So that's bad news, because I was under the impression that Sizewell C would be getting spot market price for its electricity. But that appears not to be the case. So, it's a real win-win for them. We're paying for it to be built, and at the same time, they're liable to getting over the odds for any electricity they generate. Doesn't make sense at all. The continuation of hostilities between America and Iran can only be bad news for energy bills. As long as the Strait of Hormuz remains a bottleneck, then if bad news on electricity and gas prices. And taking away VAT makes a small but hardly a huge impact on what's going on. Although everybody will welcome that. The West Somerset Free Press pointed out that HPC is having a positive impact on people and the local economy, largely due their facts are all drawn from EDF's own data, and no one has got the will or the wherewithal to investigate fully and get down to the nitty-gritty of the data that EDF produces, which may be the case, but that's one to look at. There are pro-nuclear people. There's a group called pro-nuclear women, but they exist here and in America, and it's claimed that their activity by stopping the closure of California's only nuclear power plant has saved more than 30 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions. So, bully for them. Drill or Drop, which is a title of a media outlet. Nearly twice as many Reform voters would back a solar farm in their area than would support fracking, according to a new poll. And you have to remember that fracking remains an option, although hopefully a distant one. The findings for the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit are at odds with Reform's national support for fracking. 43% of people who plan to vote Reform said they would back a solar farm as the best way to create energy locally, which compared with 23% who said they would support fracking. At Hinkley C, the second reactor pressure vessel lid has been dropped into place, and only 18 months late, but everything trundles along. Don't point these things out. And there's always a little argument that it's been done off site, or we speeded up the process somewhere. But all the extra thousands of people are having no impact on reducing the ongoing and extending delay to build. There was bother out at the site. The around 2,000 mechanical, electrical, and heating workers were turned away from the site. There was bother. The police were out there to cool heated tempers, and EDF actually closed Hinkley C for a fortnight in June so that things could be sorted out about a change in the salary structure, that it was the deals it was offering to its subcontractors and their workers, and the shift pattern, which of course, bearing in mind that it all takes a while to organise these things, a fortnight. It isn't. I'll be surprised if they claw any of that back. But that's what they're doing. Yeah, and a Russian drone hit a storage site for spent nuclear fuel near Chernobyl back in June, which obviously is just another concern. Fires, drone strikes, they're not all as accurately guided as you might hope they are. Rolls-Royce, which is the only firm with a government support for its small modular reactor SMR plans, is now in bother because it's looking to buy or subcontract some of its key processes to a South Korean firm. It's involved with Czechia as well. It's working while doing deals with them. It's also other countries will benefit as well as British workers even at this early stage. The BBC Country Farm magazine took a look at what was going on, and Alan Jeffrey of Stop Hinkley got in and pointed out that nuclear power stations are toxic radioactive waste factories, and nuclear is neither clean nor green, and the large amounts of greenhouse gases are produced in the nuclear fuel cycle from the uranium mining and fuel processing right through to the building of the power stations and the waste storage sites and the decommissioning of old reactors, which goes on for pretty much as long as the reactor was generating and costs billions. And we pay that. A man we're familiar with, Nigel Cann, who's the chief executive of Sizewell C, used to be head honcho at Hinkley C. Some would say he jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire, but never one to give up, Nigel. And he's been busy bigging up Sizewell C and what's going on there. But he did admit to the Public Accounts Committee that they asked him, are you confident that Sizewell C would be delivered on time and its lower regulatory cost of 40.5 billion? Cann replied, absolutely. And they absolutely told us it would all be done and dusted by the end of 2025. So this building this year, next year, and so on until 2030, 31, 32, 33. That's all completely a shock to everybody. He admitted there was work to do to achieve this. So already he's actually, his own words, casting doubt on whether any of the dates or figures for Sizewell C will actually hold water. That's unofficial. EDF and Centrica have invested, or they're about to invest, 800 million pounds to extend the life of Sizewell B. And their reward for that is a guarantee that for the 20-year extension from 2035 to 2055, they're guaranteed 70 pounds per megawatt hour, 24/27, irrespective of how cheap other electricity is from other sources, particularly at night time. The Spectator asked the question, will Hinkley C ever open? 20 years ago last month that Tony Blair announced that nuclear power was back on the agenda with a vengeance, and the proposal was to generate 40% of Britain's electricity in this way, double the proportion then made up by nuclear, which of course is now lower with the number of stations that have been decommissioned since. And then they saw nuclear power as a big part of the battle against climate change. 2 decades on, an alternative scenario is beginning to look more and more likely. Britain will have to spend a few years at least with zero nuclear power because Hinkley C is just dragging its way to possible completion. Not what you want. It says that other countries plan to build more nuclear reactors. We actually have to see if that transpires as well, because they will have exactly the same renewable potential as we've got. It remains to be seen how keen they are to take the big risk that goes along with building a new nuclear power station, as opposed to the virtual zero risk in building new renewables. Cummich, little village down the road from Cannington, where I am, which is on the way to Hinkley C, has pointed out that far from Hinkley C being a boon to them, in the last few years they have lost the post office. The shop, which for a while contained a post office counter, has now also gone, and the only one of 2 pubs that were in the village for a long time has now also closed, so they're feeling pretty bereft. They have to walk out of the village to get the only bus connection that works for them is the free bus, kindly run by EDF, which goes 3 times a day, Monday to Friday, into Bridgewater or out to Minehead along the roads from where we are. They get no other bus service as well, and they're only 4 miles from Hinkley C. They watch 400 buses a day go past the end of the village, and they're no use to anybody whatsoever apart the Hinkley C workers. Nuclear, right? Interestingly, the local MP for the Hinkley C area is a Lib Dem, and she accused Hinkley C of having a bullying culture, a lack of community engagement, and naive financial planning. And she said that up in front of the Public Accounts Committee, giving oral evidence. She also said, that was reported later, that she claimed that the Office for Nuclear Regulation, ONR, the regulator, had increased scrutiny of Hinkley C over bullying allegations, but that's been contested by ONR. So the new civil engineer, the media outlet that's reporting all this, claimed. That's interesting. I get the chance to ask ONR questions like that. The next one will be in September, not far away. SMRs, don't be surprised if one pops up on a site near you. All the nuclear sites around the country, whether they're current or just being decommissioned, are being eyed up to host small modular reactors because they already have gone through the approval to be a nuclear site, and it will take time and money for places elsewhere to get that status. But there are people wanting to, or claiming they want to build SMRs all over the shop. There's a Polish billionaire industrialist looking to do that. There's various other folk all over. There's but it's like whack-a-mole. You think one of them's popped up and 2 more will pop up elsewhere. All the old sites along the Severn, not far from Hinkley C, Berkeley, Oldbury, all of those are earmarked. Wilfer in North Wales, and doubtless they'll be coming to a nuclear site near you. Or, if it's an old coal-fired power station near you, they can get permission to do nuclear stuff there because it's already a brownfield site and it won't be too hard. And it's got the transmission facility not far away that they can reactivate even though it stopped producing coal-fired electricity. So that's another one to think about in the not too distant future. That's it, really. So there we are. We're pretty much up to date. Oh, it remains to be seen. We're still agog to see who will be given responsibility for the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. If they choose to keep it that, yet watch this space and we'll see how many of the civil servants remain. Not so much the civil servants, the junior ministers remain who have hitched nuclear to their wagon and want to carry on with it. So we live in interesting times, interesting times. But as the Chinese problem indicates, that's not necessarily a good thing. It's up to you to decide. Thank you very much. I hope you found that useful and hope to hear from you and see you again next time. Bye bye.